And I usually forget, so I'm going to do it right off the top. Hey, everybody, welcome to Trombone Is Enough, Episode 5, Lamar Harris. Lamar, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's just my pleasure. We were just talking about this communications company that you started, and you want to kind of pick up where you left off, talking about the mascot?
Well, in 2015, I started a company called Mindspeak Consulting, and we pretty much help clients technically bring their dreams to life as best as we can through media, through creation, and any other type of creative outlet. So one of my clients wanted to do a project that was a community engagement project, and she came up with this idea that she had based off of another character that she has at her church called Norm. So we recreated this whole concept, designed this whole outfit called Norm the Bear. Mm-hmm. And Norm the Bear, which can be purchased on Amazon, by the way, if you go to the Norm Way. It's an activity book, but Norm pretty much deals with all kind of different things for as topics that were related to young people, that some of the struggles that they go through, whether it be dealing with bullying, drugs, peer pressure, drug addiction, which actually doesn't, in my opinion, get enough attention. I think kids are dealing with, along with suicide. So the Bear kind of talks about all kind of different things. Yeah, and it's a cool activity book.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, and the work you had to put in to get the mascot designed is just incredible. You were just telling me four or 5 months is.
It took 4. You know, I didn't realize picking fur for a bear was so complicated.
What are the choices? I mean.
You don't want to know. I mean, it's what texture, how does this feel, the color. I mean, it's almost like picking out tile. If you ever had to pick out tile for a kitchen or marble countertops, and it's you've got all these different samples, and it's I mean, at this point, I'm like, man, just pick me some fur to make it look like the picture, you know. But it was a cool process to be able to go through and then understand everything that goes into wearing a mascot. So shout out to anybody that wears a mascot or that is a mascot, because it's sometimes hot in that suit.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it can just be fun but exhausting. So
I'm sure.
You know, I forget what commercial that is where the two mascots after the game were in the locker room.
Oh yeah, they're kind of clinking the beers together, right? It's tough work.
It's layers.
It's something I never had to do, but I've known people that have been mascots, especially at the theme parks and stuff, and that is not anything I'd be good at or want to do, I don't think. But when you're helping kids, I mean, it's probably pretty satisfying for a while.
Well, I think it's for the actor that actually Tavon Rice, who actually plays Norm. He is very enthusiastic. He's a father, so he relates to a lot of these different things because his kids actually experience some of them or would be faced with these similar situations. So I think it's just important just for us as adults to make sure that we are finding ways to nurture our kids and make sure that they make good choices and understand the whole thing between cause and effect. If you make this choice, there's an effect that comes with it. Yeah. What was the effect because you decided to do X, Y, and Z? So if we can prevent you from dealing with drugs or sneaking into mom and dad's stash of edibles and taking that, because that's a real thing these
now
days.
That's going to be everywhere all the time. Yeah, how do we get people to make the right choices, and some people who suffer from addiction, I myself, I'm in recovery, and I have thought in the last couple of years, now that it's everywhere, I'm so glad I already know that I can't go near it because I can't stop it. But what about a young person who doesn't know that yet?
Right.
And it's everywhere. I mean, it's so available.
Yeah, and I don't think kids sometimes realize the effects it has on your body. It can stop a lot of different developments. It can cause problems that will affect you long term without you even really knowing. And that's the same thing with any drug, where you're dealing with any type of weed products or you're dealing with pills. Depression is real amongst young people too. So there's a lot of different things that the project is able to really tackle, which is a wonderful thing, because when you think about it, not a lot of people really want to tackle these hard situations.
Yeah, we talk about how we want to solve these problems, but when it gets into starting to solve them, it's kind of hard to keep people. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
It's working in this project, did you have like tell me how it went in terms of like, you know, the mass of people working on it and whether that held steady or not?
I had a very great team. Shout out to Sinead Tate, David Gordon, who are like right hand. Like David actually designed the book, and he does a lot of educational projects. One of his most, in my opinion, I think like St. Louis famous is the one with PBS with the drawn in kids. Like David actually like writes all those stories.
Wow,
So and he actually has a company called Foresight Studio, and he does a lot of great work with youth. Sinead Tate is on the East Coast, and she has done work for like programming all the after school programs for the Baltimore School District.
Wow.
So between that and having licensed counselors like on staff that's been helping out, we were able to craft like, you know, simple stuff that made sense.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't too complicated, but like we made sure we kept it correct. And a lot of times when you're working on projects like that, you definitely need to do what I call the table work and really do the research behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what can we say? What can't we say? How do the schools feel? What's going on with the schools?
Yeah.
So we would talk to school teachers and ask them. We would talk to summer camp directors. What are your kids dealing with? We would talk to parents, you know, those who had kids that were like between 6 and 11 and those who had kids that were teenagers, like what some of the struggles. And the beautiful thing was, even with some of the episodes that we shot, and this is why you should go get that's the norm way on Amazon.
I'll
if
put
you
a link in the show too.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you scan the QR code, there are videos, and some of the videos actually were shot by students. So they held the cameras, they held the boom pole, they walked around with the gimbal, and they actually came up with a lot of the acting content. So,
wow, that is so cool. How did you meet the people that you worked with? How did that all come together?
well, I've known Sinead for years, and David I met when I actually did another project called Superheroes of Blackness. And it was the first time I decided I won a grant courtesy of RAC. Shout out to RAC.
Yeah, RAC.
It was
Yes.
a $20,000 fellowship grant.
Mm.
And I wanted to do I love theater, and I wanted to do a theatrical play that was a little different because I love music, I love comics, and I also love fashion. So I was trying to figure out how can I combine all of those things.
Yeah.
So I created this whole project where we created this animational character that was the star of this theatrical project.
Oh, how cool!
So it was cool. It was a little different. We had instead of having like a normal set, we had everything on an LED wall.
Oh,
the
neat.
character was played also by Jacqueline Thompson, voiced by her, but at the same time was played live action by I forget Jewel. I think Jewel's last name is Hamilton. And we had a bunch of different fashion designers, actors, musicians that came together for this whole project. So it was cool, and that's how I kind of met
how you met them.
David and Ike Reed. And Ike is actually another gem of St. Louis. He does a lot of work for a lot of different companies. Both of them also used to work for Dave Stewart Jr. with Lion Forge too. So,
Okay.
but they both have their own respective companies too. So
That's really cool. So that's really neat. When you said what your interests are, theater, comics, but it really made me think of the show that you put on stage at Music at the Intersection last summer. Could you tell us about what you did in case no one was there to see it, or if they saw it and they weren't sure when they were walking by, what is that? What you did and how you dreamed that up? I'd really love to know that story.
So ever since I was like in high school, I always kind of wanted a big band. Kind of like Basie. One of my favorite band leaders is Quincy Jones. And I always loved his particular big band, and I've always wanted a big band group. So I was like, well, let me start putting some together, and then it never manifest. I guess this would have been back in 2018. We worked with a guy named Christian Smith, and he wanted to do this flip on these Sinatra tunes. So he wanted to do it with a big band. So I was like, okay, well, I guess it's time to activate the big band. Everybody's
There you
like,
go.
what's the name of the big band going to be? Well, it's always was going to be the Georgia May, which was named after my grandmother.
Okay.
Kind of funny. It's like my DJ name, DJ Noonie, comes from my grandmother. Comes from my grandfather.
And
that was
that's
his
Noonie?
Noonie.
Noonie.
That was
Okay.
his nickname.
Okay.
My comic book character LJ is named after my mother, and my big band is named after my grandmother.
That's really cool. Okay.
So,
So that's the name Georgia May. I was not sure what the significance was. So
yeah, so I just called a bunch of people who I liked playing with and who I knew. So the band is technically an all-star band. It features people like Carlos Brown Jr., Kwane,
I saw
Johnson, Danny Campbell.
I think Jamie
what-
Burchett.
Jamie
Yeah.
Burchett is in there.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Andy, Doug Bird. We got Chris Miller on lead. We got people like Sandy Roll in the band, Ryan Marquez, Antonio Foster, Jingo Williams. You got Jason Moore. You also got Buddy Quarles.
Yeah.
You got singers like Paige Alyssa, Sherry Evans, Pig. You got C.J. Conrad. You got people like Black Spade that drift in and out. So you know, it's a band of a who's who,
Yeah.
but it's a good big band.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It sounded amazing.
it was cool. I enjoyed it, and a lot of people didn't realize I was doing a lot of my originals too.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. So how do you compose a lot? Do you have a lot of original material going back? I'd like to know more about your history here and all of the different projects that you've worked on.
Well, I started making music back in like 2004. That was back when I first bought my first like laptop and I had a little. Actually, it was before I even had the Digio One. I actually had I think it was the Digio One, the rack mount. So I used to
right.
carry that thing around.
Oh my God.
You know, man, it was crazy. I used to carry it like in a bass amp case. And, you know, that's how you would just do it and just walk around with it. So
Yeah.
I've got music like dating back to my first album, You're All, my sophomore. We actually had a lot of great St. Louis people on there: Black Spade, Tef Poe, Chill the Player, Coco Soul, Coltrane, Jason Moore, James Holloway Jr., Mark Harris was on there.
Wow.
So,
Mark Harris is great.
You know, yeah, Mark has been with me since he was like 14 because
Oh my gosh.
we all used to go to the same church. So,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Okay.
so it's a lot. It was a lot of great people on the album. So then fast forward to my sophomore album, which was mainly produced by me with the help of Jason Moore on a couple songs. Teresa Janae slid in on a remix or two. But that was the first time I actually did a whole album completely where it was just like me. And
Was
yeah,
that different?
it was different.
How so?
Versus like having like all of the live instruments on the first album, like all the drums were live, bass, you know, I played keys, a bunch of other people played keys.
Yeah.
I played everything. So I
Oh,
programmed
man.
stuff, and it was a little different, but it got me into the mode of understanding that, hey, you know, when you do this, you can always flip this over to live.
Yeah.
So when I released that album, I actually did a live album version of it at the Bistro, in the old Bistro,
Yeah.
with Good for the Soul.
Okay.
So
okay,
that
right.
was very cool and very
I
interesting.
remember when that came out. Yeah.
So, you know, it was the first time like, man, like I actually got a DVD.
Yeah. How about that? Of the whole show, like filmed there?
Yeah. So
That's really neat.
So we put together a DVD and a live CD, and that was kind of cool. Then for a while, I just kind of like produced for people on and off. And at that time, I was still going down to Nashville working with some of Toby Mac's artists. So working with Verbs, working with Liquid. So that was
okay.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
Are
it-
you still back and forth between there, or?
Not as much as I used to. You know, life starts happening, and you know, next thing you know, you have to, you know, deal with life. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I kind of slowed up on traveling as much as I was,
Okay.
and I wished I would have found a way to keep going. So, you know, sometimes you get where you like right on the cusp of the door,
Yeah.
and you like, well, I don't know, because I got to deal with this and deal with that.
Yeah.
Now realizing if I probably would have just pressed on through, it would have been able to hopefully like financially lift some other problems off of some other things that was going on.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. It's hard to know sometimes if I'm supposed to be pushing this or letting this back, stay back, and you know, when you're doing your own stuff, like on your second album, you were doing it all yourself. But the first album, you were relying on other musicians, real other people, humans.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's totally a different situation, right? And do you ever find that you're trying to figure out what you like better?
I always like having like different people to work with, but you know, sometimes it doesn't always crack like that, and you just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm working on a project now with Kervin Boyd,
Oh.
and I actually did a project for him when he was with Alvin Ailey.
Oh,
So
wow.
called Steel.
Oh my
So
gosh. Okay.
that was, again, it was me majority, but it also had Jingo Williams, Scooter Brown on there, and Danny Campbell made an appearance.
Okay.
But majority of the work was me.
Can you tell us what that's about?
Well, Still is a dance piece that's 25 minutes long, that was commissioned by Alvin Ailey, that toured around the country. Kervin Boyd actually like did the choreography, and he reached out to me to do this piece, and I'm like you want like a song, a bunch of songs, and he started describing it, and then it was like this amount of information. I was like left like, what in the world are we doing? But it was a good challenge because I never did anything like that. Like, I think when I go back and look at some of those tracks, like I had literally like 42 like horn parts.
Whoa.
Like, it was a lot going on. Like,
It's yeah.
and you can actually find it on my SoundCloud,
Okay.
Lamar Harris 314.
Okay, we'll put that out there too.
Shameless plug.
Yes, all the time.
But it was a good opportunity to be able to, number one, do something with one of the greatest dance companies that's, that the world has ever known, and then be able to have your work actually like tour around.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And it was a good experience. So this new piece that I'm doing for him, which is actually like in conjunction with Coca, it is called Mother.
Okay.
And it deals with the journey of these boys that are going through life and becoming men, and how their mothers have influenced them to be able to make good choices, defend themselves, and technically been training them.
Okay.
And this is a little different in the sense where the Steel project was only 25 minutes. This is like 50 minutes.
Okay, so that's bigger.
It's a lot bigger. So we were in a production meeting, and I was like, well, they're like, how's it going? It's getting there. It's slow burn. I mean, because it's literally like you making an album.
That's huge. That's almost an hour's worth of stuff.
But it's fun, and I've been enjoying it. So
what kinds of things are you pulling out of yourself for this?
I'm pulling out a lot, man. It's kind of weird. Like, I have to go like into like deep dark places inside myself to like find certain things to get that sound to be like, the way I kind of describe it, and I think Black Spade said it best, is he always calls it like that junky horn, like kind of cuspous, out of tune sound, but
Yeah.
it kind of speaks to like life a little bit.
Right. It's
So-
not perfect. It's not smooth. It's not polished.
Yeah, but
Right.
there's something kind of polishing it up a little different.
Mhm.
I got a chance a few weeks ago at this last Music at the Intersection to play with Keon Harold,
Yeah.
which was a great experience.
What a set.
Him, Pharoah Monk, and Stout, and then playing with Cedric and Charles, and man, and the whole rest of everybody. It was an experience,
Oh,
but
man.
it made me just kind of like rethink like what is the story that we're really trying to tell in this particular moment.
Mhm.
Where I am in life, how does this particular storyline affect my own personal journeys? I was raised by my grandmother, primarily between my grandmother and my grandfather and my mother,
And where was that? By the way?
here in St. Louis,
St. Louis,
out of
okay.
Paysdale, Missouri.
Paysdale. Okay.
And it was one of those things where my grandmother was influential in a lot of my upbringing, and my mother was influential in a lot of my business. Same thing with my grandfather.
Mhm.
And I find myself going back, dwelling on those type of things, and incorporating those into the music,
Right.
so that when I, even like some simple line is based off of something I would be, hearing my grandmother sing when she's laid across the bed.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, what was she doing laid across the bed? She was looking out the window. That was her daily routine.
Mhm.
And
What was she looking at?
she was looking and praying. That was what my grandmother did.
Okay.
And I felt that, like, her prayers have like guided me quietly through life a lot of times. And when we sometimes think, when we send our kids out in the world, we want to make sure that they're protected, and you just ask God's blessing, the Creator's blessing, to be able to just protect the kid.
Yeah.
Make sure they make it home safe, make sure no harm comes to them.
Mhm.
And when you fast forward to a piece like this, that's pretty much what every parent wants, their child to grow, to be successful, and to make it through.
Mhm.
One of the things that, I realize even doing some of this is that, you have to just be vulnerable, even as a musician, to just put your real feelings out there and just let it just lay.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not always just instant. It takes a minute because you gotta travel some places, and
Yeah.
it's a little different. It's a little daunting. Sometimes I find myself just sitting in the booth and you just crying because you
Yeah.
just but after you cry for a second, next thing you know, you playing something like, okay, that's what I needed.
Yeah, yeah, and it's coming from deep down, and serving the music is it pulls things up that, like you said, that come from us going way back. I mean, music's like our first language that we hear, you know.
And when you look at like some of the work that Kervin does, Kervin is a great choreographer and he has great vision. Then you got other people like Brandon Vaughn, who's a fashion designer, who's designing all the costumes. And me knowing both of them, they lay their life force literally inside of their work. And you don't want to step up half cocked to the game.
Right.
Come to the party or don't come
Right.
at all. So,
Right. They're pouring their 100% in, and here you come up with 50, and
right.
it just doesn't work.
I'm actually wearing a Brandon Vaughn piece today.
Oh,
So,
really? I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, I've noticed on Facebook, your Facebook page, and when you perform, that like the outfits you're wearing are always really, really cool. And I asked my wife if I could maybe go back to wearing trinkets, and she said no. And I don't know why. I think my wife thinks that as a musician, I should be wearing the same thing I'd wear to work if I was still working in corporate. I don't know. But there was a day that I wore boots and trinkets and things, and I was just at this music festival in Louisville. It's called Bourbon and Beyond. 4 days, 4 nights. 4-day festival, and saw a lot of amazing talent on the stage. And I'm like, yeah, man, look at the Black Crowes. They are wearing trinkets and boots and stuff. And I'm like, I want to wear my boots again. She's like, no, you're too old for those boots.
You're never too old.
Right.
Especially when you go out to the festivals and hang out. I mean, it's just, just recreating the vibe.
Yeah.
That's one thing I can always admire about music at the intersection. You look around like some people just back reliving the heyday. I remember when Pharaoh did Simon Says, and like all of a sudden you just seen everybody, like I thought it was finna be a mosh pit. I was like, man, Scooter the lady that was playing tap, he's like, I'm like, man, they mosh pit. I am not jumping. I may jump in with this too, but
right, you never know. I really enjoyed the DJ Nooney set that you did there. And I didn't realize, do you do a lot, you play valve instrument as well as trombone, and you do both during that set?
I actually do, most of the time I'll play flugelhorn and play trombone, but I also will play keys, also play tuba. From time to time I'll bring out the slide trumpet, the pocket trumpet, I'll bring out the mellophone,
Wow.
I've slowed down, man, because after a while it's like, man, it's a lot of stuff to pack up.
Right, carrying those cases and fitting them in the car. Of course, you have a truck. Either way.
I remember when I first started, I remember my setup was crazy. Like I had 2 turntables, a mixer, a drum machine, I had 3 keyboards, I had like all the brass instruments, and it would take me sometimes about like an hour just to set all this stuff up.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
And then after the end of the night, it's like, man, who wants to put all this stuff up? And
So were you a DJ, were you using electronic stuff before you got into trombone, or how did all that happen?
Well, I was using electronics, I guess like I was using it on my first album. So I had that was when Yamaha came out with the little small like Walkman like processor.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was the silent mute, but it also had effects in there. I was like, this could actually be used like live.
Oh,
so I would take the little box that they had and I would run it into a mic and I would use the effects on there.
Oh,
and I was doing that actually in college a little bit. So then I started getting into pedals and it's like, man, next thing you know, you're spending more money. It's like, you slow down.
There's always more money.
Yeah.
So you were playing trombone in college already, and then started playing with effects then?
Yeah.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Missouri.
Oh, right.
So that's where my mother and my grandmother decided that's where I was going.
Okay.
Like,
not an option.
I wanted to go to Jackson State, couldn't go there, got accepted, couldn't go. Could have went to FAM, no. Could have went to Tennessee. Everywhere I wanted to go, it was always a no. And the number one thing was, well, you get stranded there. Who coming to get you? I'm like, well, that's what the car is for. You know, we ain't stopping our lives to come get you going up the street to Mizzou. So, and it was a good experience. When I was there, there was a lot of good people. Kevin Dance was there, good drum instructor. Fred Hemke was over the program.
Okay.
But I made a lot of good friends, especially like in trombones section.
Oh, nice.
I finally got a chance to meet Steve Wills because I went to Normandy.
Oh,
so
okay.
we were bred to hate Parkway West.
Oh, so Steve Wills. I don't know who he is.
Steve Wills is I think he's in Texas, but he's a very good trombone player.
Oh, okay.
And I'd always heard stories about Steve, but I never met Steve. And I was like, hey, I know you through hearing about you in marching band.
That's great.
So, you know, him, Seth Marenbloom, Joe Kosis, oh man, oh God, I should know. The brothers. One plays trombone and the other one plays trumpet.
No.
David and, oh God. I know he's going to kill me. He's like, you can't remember my name.
We got to find that. We got to figure that out.
But
David and...
Weiss, the Weiss brothers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I like.
Okay.
Yeah, they were, you know, they were good guys and stuff. Brian Weiss, I'm tripping.
Yeah.
But Brian was my second.
He's local, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they were out in Lindbergh district.
Yeah.
Brian actually, he's a great teacher. Both of him and David are good teachers, but Brian actually was a great trombone player.
Oh, okay.
You know, and still
Okay.
is. So,
Yeah.
you know.
He sent me lots of trombone students back in my day when I was teaching, and yeah, he had a great program at Lindbergh, and everybody wanted to get better on trombone. I had like 20 students.
And he's just a good guy and a good teacher, and he has a real love for kids, man.
Mhm.
And it's kind of sometimes hard to find teachers that are enthusiastic about the job.
Oh,
you know, I mean, I always tell people, like, there's a difference between a job and a career.
Mhm.
You know, when this is your career, you understand what the mission is day in, day out. Some days you do get tired, but you still go in like, hey, we're going to fire it up. And
Right.
we're just going to make it.
Because they're counting on you
Yeah.
to show them the way, right?
You know, I mean, it's kind of one of those things, like being a teacher is sometimes a thankless job, but, you know, you sometimes take on a persona of, like, you know, these kids that come in here sometimes not only learn, but they get away from their daily problems and stuff.
Mhm.
You know, you as a teacher, you know, you have to be able to teach, but also have to be able to distract them to keep them going too. So it's kind of a give and give.
Right.
Like I call it like the MC and the DJ. They give energy to each other, and that's just how it is.
That's
and
right.
you all deliver the project to the crowd. So.
Right. I like that. So college at Mizzou, and then what? St. Louis, or?
I bounced around for a little bit. Went to Chicago and stayed there for a while, and then
Mm-hmm.
came back here, worked a bunch of odd jobs, got a job as a school teacher, and
Oh,
you know,
where and what?
At Crossroads College Preparatory School.
Oh, okay.
So I started a band program there. When I first took the job, there were only like 5 kids in the program. When I left, we had about 75% of the student body inside of the music
What?
program.
That's incredible.
So-
How is the program still going now? Do
I
you
think
know?
it is. I think
That's
it is,
great.
you know,
Great
so,
job,
you know,
man. That's fantastic.
It's a great school, great institution.
How
So-
did you get that kind of growth? That sounds.
Well, I had also great mentors. So, like, I had people like Bob Wagner I would always reach out to. Robert Boges, who used to be my band director at Normandy, I would always talk to him. And, I mean, one of the biggest things that Boges shared with me was, like, you know, artist versus educator. You know, sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can do one, sometimes you can't do the other one. So
Yeah.
it made me start thinking about, as a teacher, what type of values and things that I want my kids to learn. I always told my students, like, you know, it's not about being a good musician, it's about getting to what your goal is. Sometimes you can be good, but use this as a vehicle to get to where your next step is. Especially if, you know, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer. You know, we're not trying to get you to go out and tour around. We want you to be able to have a good experience.
Right.
And, you know, I would focus on, like, letting my students understand, like, if I had a gig, they would come do the gig. They'd be the backing band. So they knew how to run the sound check. They knew how to go talk to the engineer. They knew how to go talk to anybody that was in control. And that was teaching them communication skills, them understanding how to do contracts, and this is the business behind it.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't sometimes teach our kids about, we teach them how to gig and, like, oh, play this song, but we don't teach them the mechanics of the gig.
Right.
You know,
Right. The intricacies of getting the booking, getting a contract, protection on both sides.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel even as educators, you have to do a due diligence to where you don't corrupt that, like you're in high school, you shouldn't be coming telling me, well, I charge $400. How you charging $400? Where you getting it? Can I see your resume? Oh, you don't have that. You got your one sheet? Okay, can you send me your AP? Well, no, but you're charging me $400. Well,
Yeah.
that's because that's what we've taught you to do, but we haven't told you that there's levels to different gigs. Sometimes if you're doing a gig where there's no cover charge, you can't go in and expect the promoter or the club owner to pay you your normal corporate rate of $2,000 or $3,000.
Right.
Sometimes it's a give and take,
Yeah.
But if it's a corporate gig, sometimes you look at what are the pluses and the minuses.
Right.
Why am I coming to do this gig versus not doing it? There might be other people in the room to be able to hear you. They allow you to get other work. So
Right.
sometimes it may not pay as much as you want it to,
Right.
but being in that space opens up a wealth. When I first started as DJ Noonie, I actually financed my first gig.
Oh, no way.
So I've always loved fashion, and I used to stay across the street in the Art Loft from Windows on Washington.
Uh-huh.
And one day, me and my girlfriend were just looking out the window. It was like, I think they're having a fashion show over there. We should just go.
Uh-huh.
So we crashed the fashion show, and I was like,
Probably one of Dwight's.
yep. I think it was with a live magazine.
Okay.
And
yeah.
we were walking around, and I was like, hey, you guys don't use a DJ? Well, not normally. I was like, okay, well, my management may one of the times maybe will sponsor me coming. So I'm like, okay. He gave lady my card. Fast forward a couple months later, hey, we got a fashion show coming up.
Right.
You think you'd want to come and do it? I was like, well, sure. Let me talk to my management.
Yeah, which is you, right?
Well, I go talk to the guy in the mirror. Hey,
Right.
This fashion show. I think we will. Cool. Let's make it work.
Right.
So
That's so cool.
I did the gig. Unbeknownst to me, I was actually featured in the next issue of the magazine because I was in all the recap photos.
Oh wow! Okay.
So
break,
Big
break, or
it was the start of understanding being in the room. I can create more work. So the next time I did a gig, I was getting paid for the gigs.
nice.
And then I started branching out and doing more corporate events and hooking up with some booking companies and doing other things.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to just balance it out to understand, what am I sacrificing to be in this room? Is it worth being in this space? And sometimes you just got to shoot the shot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love how you've blended all these things that you love, and you really found your way. It's inspiring. Every time I see you at Music at the Intersection, it's been a completely different thing. And over the years, you've performed in all these different settings. It's just really.
I'm still trying to grow, man. And I'm still growing and transitioning because, I think in this hour, it's the older you get, you can't be the 60 or 70-year-old cat in the club talking about,
Back in my day, when I was a kid.
Or yelling ski-wee and stuff like that. Kids looking at you like, what?
Right. What is something that you're trying to take on now as a challenge?
That's a very good question. Loaded too, but it's a good one.
Is there anything you're reaching for now?
Well, I think I'm just reaching for just making sure I am where I'm supposed to be in the next leg. It's kind of wide open. I know I can DJ for a while, but I know that has an expiration date. I know I can keep playing for a while, but that even has an expiration date sometimes. Especially playing all these different instruments is sit down and just play one. Still producing. I'm trying to get more into the theater world a little bit for us doing more sound design because I actually like that. I enjoy theater. Actually, one of my biggest breaks was actually performing in Buddy Holly at the Muni.
Oh, really?
That was enjoyable.
Oh, okay.
Because it was one of the few shows where they did not have a pit.
Oh my gosh! So you were up on stage.
Up on stage,
and
neat. It was I had some acting lines. Man, I gotta talk.
Oh,
okay, cool.
Well, I saw something on Facebook about you doing something at the Black Rep too. Were you on stage as an actor in that, or just as a musician?
No. Buddy Holly was the only thing I was on stage as an actor and a musician, and dancer because we had to dance. I was like, man,
what?
Oh, it was crazy. My first scene even coming out, man, I had on underneath I had a suit on.
Okay.
Then I had a real wool sweater plus a hat and some other pants.
Oh my gosh.
So I would just be back there. Ben Nordstrom would always be killing me every time I would go on, because he would be over behind this one thing, and he'd be over there dancing, doing all these things, and I'd have to be ready, like, okay, you like, okay, I'm ready, So, but it was crazy. It was a good experience. With the Black Rep, I've just been fortunate enough to do sound design for several of their productions.
Okay.
One, Behind the Sheet, was one. And I did another one. But I've also worked for like Metro Theater Company. I was the MD for the Alice in Wonderland, which was under the direction of Jamie. I forget Jamie's last name. I'm just like missing everybody's names today.
Oh, that's okay.
But
if you think about it, we'll put it on.
Yeah.
When you say, so I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Sound design, I want to know more specifically what that includes, and then music directing. How did you get into that? So 2 questions. Take them in your order.
Well, I just kind of got into sound design because it was like, I love being able to like MD shows.
Okay.
So not every show theater-wise has an MD, but they do always have a sound design.
Oh,
so,
okay.
That's coming up with all the effects, sometimes
okay.
transition music.
Okay.
There was another, they're going to kill me. Giordi is going to kill me. Skeleton Crew was the name of the work we just did with the Black Rep at Coca, and I sound designed for that.
Okay.
But it was like based off of like everything from like the whole auto union workers from Detroit.
Oh.
So, and coming up with all the different sounds of what was happening in Detroit in the 90s, and like though I guess like it would be like early 2000s. So that was during the time of Dilla. So I could do that in my sleep.
Really?
So that was very fun. So I curated the music, but also like the sounds of like the factory. Like what would this sound like, Shout out to Peter and Marjorie Spax that did the set design and also did the projections. So they would have like all these different images of like the stamp stuff going up and down, and you coming up with all these sounds to make sure that they hit at the same time. And it's a lot of like research, but it's kind of cool to be able to go and design that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went and bought another portable rig, so I would go out and just like record like different sounds myself and go back to the studio and edit them.
Okay.
You would sometimes like, what would the car sound like? You go stick the little microphone under the car.
Yeah.
Or you would go sneak into somebody's plant and just walk in and just stand there and just like try to grab the sounds of the plant and then walk out.
Yeah.
Just so you can just have them to incorporate into the project.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm working on another project for one of the Black Rep's upcoming seasons, and I'm excited about it, which I can't talk about it right now.
I was going to ask can you say the name of the show or
I don't know
okay.
if it's even out yet. So,
oh, okay. All right. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, but I'm excited about it, and that one's going to be a little different of a soundscape because it would deal with back in the '60s, and it would be heavily blues and soul driven. So I'm excited about that.
Very cool. That's very exciting. Such a rich time of our history in America for sure.
But I'm blessed to be able to like do stuff like that. But it's it's one world that people don't think about. Like you go to any movie or anything like that. What makes the stuff is the sound. So if you don't have sounds of the and the duh and the what's the purpose of it? So,
Right. My son and I did we both entered a contest, Marvin Hamlish film composition contest, film scoring.
Oh.
And I found it, and I said, "Hey, let's do this. We'll each do an entry," and they gave us a animated film about 13 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
And my son, once I started watching what he was doing, I'd stopped doing mine, and I just watched his. And over the course of the next month, he did the Foley, he did music composition to fit the mood that he was seeing, and he actually, to make the sound of this like springy sound, he took a can, like a soda can, cut it with snips, and like twisted it, and so when it fell on the ground, and he recorded it, and then manipulated it, it sounded like a spring. I'm like, okay, you're a genius. I'm not on that level, but every sound that was in the film then it seemed so natural because he put it all there, and I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is a career.
It is. Like, there was a guy who I was on this tour with named Ray Miggins, and he had this trumpet player out of New York. I forget guy's name, but he worked for Mattel. And I was like, well, what do you do for Mattel? He's like, I break stuff. Like, what does that mean? He's like, no, when I mean I break stuff to go inside of the toys. So he designs the crashes, all of that stuff. So
Whoa.
he says sometimes we'll be working on a project, we may have like a $100,000 budget just to go tear something up just so we can get the sound.
Oh, that is so cool.
And then we'll go get more money to tear more stuff up.
Yeah.
And it's like
That's
I'm like, that's a real job.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that. So that's what always made me like think about sound design. And then that's a good way to practice, man. Like, taking a film or a little short anime,
Yeah.
and like if you can keep the vocals in there, pull out the music,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then just recreate all the music and the sound to it,
Mhm.
because it gives you a chance to see like this is the stuff that goes into just sound design. It's not just like somebody just go grab a random crash. There's a sound when the lightsaber comes out in Star Wars.
Yeah, there's a specific sound to that.
Yeah, there's even a sound like even when people are walking, like like they're walking down the hallway, somebody's sitting on a board walking, and some either some Stacey Adams or some heels or something
Whoa.
to make that sound. And,
That's amazing.
and I like stuff like that, man. It's kind of fun because when you think about it, it's like the most subtle things that make a production be like technically come alive.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about it until you're in the movies and stuff like that. So,
That's right. That's right. When you said the word practice, it made me wonder, do you practice trombone? Do you have the time? How do you fit it in? That's always something I like to talk to trombone players about. How do you deal with that?
I need to practice more, a lot more. Sometimes I'm able to practice depending on what I'm working on. Even when I was out the country, like over in Europe for 2 weeks, I took my horn.
I just saw you went to Venice.
I was in Venice, I was in Portugal, I was in Croatia, the Netherlands, and then I made a stop at Iceland, which I didn't know I was even stopping in Iceland. I had a layover, and I was like, this is Iceland? Like, where's the ice?
Yeah.
Like, no,
Right.
it's not time for that. And so I was like, oh, cool. So, but, it was cool, just being able, like, especially in Croatia, just, I forget the park I went to, but I wound up biking like 60 miles, and I was like,
Whoa.
I was just on an adrenaline rush. I'm like, man, it's been a long time since
That's a big bike ride. Were you doing music there or just
I was there
traveling for relaxation?
Kind of a combination of both. I had a gig I needed to do, so I went and did the gig, but also I had a lot of downtime, and I went like a week earlier just so I could I'm going to be there. Let's just make the most of it. And it's not as expensive as people think it is.
Really?
People think we need thousands and thousands of dollars. No, just properly plan the flight.
Okay.
Plan out the hotel. You can get great deals,
Mhm.
and then the food is not expensive. So
Okay.
if you're not trying to go to a Michelin star restaurant, you'll be fine. And just balance it out. But I really enjoyed Venice. I enjoyed the whole experience.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of weight over there.
Oh, you did?
Because the food is just different.
Okay.
It's a lot cleaner and healthier.
Yeah.
And I just I felt better and more alive.
Yeah. Yeah. The Mediterranean diet, for one thing, is a lot cleaner, I think.
And I'm not really a big wine drinker, but I find myself like drinking more wine. It's like
Okay.
it's like okay.
That's really neat. So, and you got to play a gig. Was it playing like a trombone gig, or was
Or
it
just DJ.
like DJ? Okay.
So I got
No instruments. You didn't have to cart around any instruments.
Oh, I took my trombone.
Oh, you
So,
did?
But
Okay.
I cheated with taking my trombone. So a friend of mine, Josh, who travels, like he goes back and forth like to Europe all the time. He was like, man, the weight. What you gonna do about the weight? I'm working it out. I don't know how I'm working it out. So I took my trombone. I got another trombone. I got a Bach LT16.
Okay.
So I put it in the P-bone case.
Ah, the P-bone, yeah.
And then I took some.
That's the plastic trombone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then, it's real thin, but
Yeah.
as long as you ain't throwing the horn around, it should be okay.
Uh-huh.
I wrapped a beach towel up in it,
Get out.
so to give it to make sure the bell wouldn't hit be busted against the slide. Threw a
Yeah.
couple other little things in there, and then I strapped it to like the back part of the backpack. So I tried to make it look like one piece. So every time I would
Oh.
go through like a check-in, I would be real slick with like how I had my sling bag and how I had this trombone. So they looked like they were just one piece and nobody bothered me.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, well, I said one time on, I'm not bashing the company. It's just a little different. But EasyJet was the only place I got bothered at, and it was
really?
and it wasn't
EasyJet.
EasyJet.
Okay.
So I decided to take an EasyJet from like Croatia to the Netherlands.
Okay.
And I get on the plane early, like cool. I stick, I'm all sitting in my seat. This little girl comes up and just like slam, yo, and I messed up because I actually said like, hey, don't slam it against the instrument. Flight attendant comes by. If you have an instrument, you needed to check that, and that's blah 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 blah, and that's an extra cost. I'm like, well, I didn't know, it's my first time. Well, you blah 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 blah, like it's fitting in there, and she just kept making a big deal out of it. I'm like watch this, so I take the trombone out, and I just like throw it on top of this other thing, like see how nicely that slid in there. It's not a problem. It's still an instrument. I'm like, oh, wow. EasyJet.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe stay away from EasyJet.
Yeah.
Well, so we were talking about practice. How do we get from there to traveling? I guess because it's hard to practice when you're traveling.
Yes.
Okay.
But I try to practice as much as I can, depending on what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
I just do what I try to go through a project. If it's something I'm working on where it's a lot of like improv, like the music I'm doing now, I just try to just open my mind and just let it just kind of just flow. So I don't have like I'm practicing like all these Coltrane and Remington studies. And, I mean, every teach his own. I feel everybody has their own practice regimen. And for me, I just try to like gather stuff that I hear, and I try to just regurgitate it as best as I can.
Yeah. Do you want to do some playing together?
Sure.
Do you want to play something that you're working on now? You just said some new things that you're coming up with. If you wanted to play it, I could maybe try and play along, or what would you want to do?
Let's pick a key.
Oh, okay. E flat.
Hey.
How about E flat?
I like E flat.
Okay.
So.
And I haven't practiced yet this morning, so I'm going to blow a long tone.
Yeah, man.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I love your sound. That is a big
Likewise.
horn.
Oh man,
You always play on bigger kind of horns?
I just started doing like playing on bigger horn like in the last like 5 years.
Okay.
Actually, go to the brass exchange, Doug Burt.
Right, Doug Burt. I'm trying to get him on my show.
Yeah.
Loved Doug Burt. Single-handedly changed my life by helping me learn the right sized horn for me. He spent a lot of time with me.
What kind of horn is it? I've been trying to figure this out.
This is a Holton.
Okay.
It says it's a Revelation. It's unlike any other Holton Revelations. If you pull up images on the internet, you won't find a Holton Revelation like this with this bracing. But it's a Revelation. So it seems to be a one-of-a-kind horn, and I got it from Doug. I went to Doug's because I was playing on like a 3B size horn all my life, and I could never get the air support that I really felt I needed. In fact, studying with Tim Myers at the Symphony in college, he was always trying to get me to fill up the horn. I'm trying to fill it up. And anyway, I was hanging out with Doug, and he's like, well, play some of these horns. And he had me play, I mean, this is a 6.7, like 6 3/4 inch bell, so it's not even 7 inches. He had me play like 10 or 15 different trombones about this size, and he would sit on one end of the room and listen to me, and then he would play the horn, and I would listen to him play the horn, and it was about 4 hours on one Saturday and 4 hours on another day that we spent together, and finally realized I'm playing on too big a horn. And so I switched, and I also switched to smaller mouthpieces, and the sound, which I know is so important to us, right? My sound does not sound big and golden and velvety like a lot of trombonists, but I can play what I want to play. Yeah. I can play what I hear in my head, and it's kind of a sacrifice that I make.
I mean, it's that sound. The horn sounds good. You sound good. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like this is an olds opera, but I started playing on olds. Like that's what we had at Normandy. Like most of the horns were like, I know they were olds, but I don't know what model olds.
Okay.
So I've always been used to playing on a small bore.
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, try this. I'm like, man, this is a lot of work.
It is, right?
But I find myself like playing it a little bit more, but I still got my Bach LT16.
Okay.
Actually used to be Robert Edwards' horn.
Now, is that's a smaller type?
Smaller bore,
okay.
Smaller Bach horn. That's a lightweight slide. Well, this is not a lightweight slide.
Yeah.
And then I have.
There's nothing that looks lightweight about that horn.
No, it's got some weight to it, but I actually enjoy it because it actually I can at times I can actually like stretch out on it. Like play full throttle and stuff. But I like the sound and the look of that.
Oh well, thanks. I love the sound of that. It's so your tone is great. It's big and round, and it's what I would aspire to. And that was really neat playing together. I wear hearing aids now, and I should have thought of that before we played. But sometimes tuning is harder with my hearing aids on. I usually flip them off. But I love hearing when we play a note, 2 notes in harmony, and we get it right in tune, and then like there's this magic thing that happens in the air. I can't.
Because it just goes as natural, man. Like sometimes I think we focus so much on all the mechanics, we don't focus on just being in the moment and just having a good time.
Yeah.
Every note doesn't have to be perfect. Everything doesn't have to be so technically like this. I remember one time I seen John Blackman, who used to be the drummer for Prince. He did a workshop at Blueberry Hill, and he did this fill. And guy was like, so did you do like 3, like it was a paradiddle mixed with a blah, 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 blah. He's like, hey man, it's just a church fill, Just be in the moment,
right.
So I think trombone is kind of like that,
Right.
I still don't, to this day, don't think there's nothing better in the world than a trombone choir.
Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful, right? With all the different sizes, even like a bass trombone, a couple of tenors.
Yeah, put the E flat horn on that side.
Yeah, that's right. Do you play one of those E flat alto?
That is the one thing I cannot do.
I've never tried.
I have. It's like it messes with my. Like it's kind of weird. Like I can look at trumpet music and read it on trombone like it's nothing.
Oh, wow.
I look at music and see, and I'll be like having to think real hard.
Yeah.
I pick up this E flat horn. I'm like, I do not know what in the world we're doing.
Yeah.
I can pick up a French horn and play it with no problem. But
Really?
it for some reason like this doesn't trans.
The E flat key thing is interesting, which is funny because E flat's one of my favorite keys to play in, but still, just it's kind of the same thing. Have you ever used a trigger horn, like an F trigger?
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I had an F trigger King 3B, and I could just never really understand the purpose for this trigger except to play C a little closer for me, and I never really could get the idea of, okay, pull the trigger and now this horn is in the key of F. So what do I do with that? I can never figure it out.
My trombone teacher, Nathaniel Brickens in college, always used to say, the real trombone player is the bass trombone player. And older I get, I started understanding it because I actually played in the Genesis Jazz Project.
Oh,
so
okay.
I normally play lead, but for some reason this particular year, a couple years ago, we didn't have we didn't have a bass trombone player. So I was like, well, I'll just go play bass. I did it. I won't do it again.
Why? What's the most not fun thing about that?
I mean, it's like if you're not used to using all these different alternate positions all the time, it's like my brain just doesn't think like, okay, instead of doing this and trying to go down 6, jump back to 4, go 1, and like hit trigger. It's like it just my brain doesn't think about it all the time.
Me neither.
But crazy thing is like I pick up a rotary tuba and just like go.
Now that's crazy too. I don't get that.
I get that, but I just don't. And then let it be like if it's a double trigger, I'd be like, explain this again. Like,
the double triggers. Is it F and D?
Yeah.
I think, or
I think so.
I don't know.
It's
I've seen them. That's a lot of piping on that.
It's not my ministry, so I stay away from it. So,
That's right. That's right.
But it's cool. That's the beautiful thing about trombone, man. It's like it's probably one of the few instruments that can actually cover like all the range.
Yeah, and I think we can blend with everybody, and I love blending with saxophones and trumpets, and but there's something about just 2 trombones, man. And that was really nice. Thanks for playing with me.
No, I actually have to get. I have something that I have never done yet. We actually have a bunch of like trombone arrangements of like the music of the OJs that I had a friend of mine.
All for trombone?
All for trombone.
Oh my God, pick me, please. I love the OJs, man.
Because, you think about like these are 3 tenor voices, that's what trombone is.
Oh my God, I'd love to at least hear that.
I still got like a couple more things I need to get arranged, but like my ideal like lineup, if I could have had it, I don't even know if I would even play. I would sit down. So it would be Jeff Bradshaw, Sonda Sermon, and if you could ever convince Fred to come play. If not, I would slide in and try to keep up. We got a chance to play with Fred.
Fred Wesley?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was, he's come to town a few times, but I got to see him at Kirkwood High School.
Courtesy of the Low Brass Collective we brought.
Yeah.
And I felt like I felt like we all were getting hazed.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, man, when he I can't remember if he said, he kept saying, it's got to be funky, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of funky, and I'm thinking that in my head, and but then I wouldn't want to be standing up there and have him tell me I'm not funky.
I put my horn away, and he was like, "Where your horn at? Go get it." Like,
oh no!
Like, man, and then every time like look over, I'm trying not to I'm trying to step back, and he looked. I'm like, man,
yeah.
Like I'm just happy to be here,
Yeah.
But it was a great time, like, and then hearing him tell these stories about how he did all that stuff, like James Brown brought him in to go against Maceo. That was his purpose,
Yeah.
And like I didn't want to be no funk player. I want to play jazz. I'm like,
right. That was amazing. And the one I was at, they did a standard, and I was like, wow, he really can play jazz. Like, it's amazing.
I mean, he can play anything he wants to, man.
Sure.
And he has a very unique sound. Saunders has a very unique sound. Even Troy Andrews has a unique sound, and that's the beautiful thing about trombone. We all don't have to sound the same.
Yeah. How do you cope with your sound when you're listening to the album and you're mixing the album that you're going to put out? Are you critical of your sound?
Sometimes I am, and then I have to realize, like, go back to the roots of like why I'm even doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Some stuff I have to like you know, make sure when I record it, I'll be a little more subtle.
Mm.
Like the stuff I'm working on now, like there's times I need to be a lot more subtle with the playing and
Okay.
be methodical, like making sure that, you know, I come in on time and this needs to be not out of tune, needs to be right in tune, so get the tune out. Or making sure that I'm using the right kind of vibrato and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Other times it's like, this is hip hop, you know, just go with it and let the horn just blast and
Yeah,
go. So,
there's got to be some stuff on that you know, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong.
yeah, and you know, everybody, like, I feel like sometimes I'm thinking, we say this politically correct. I feel, I guess it just went.
Oh, it's still on.
Oh.
It's still going.
Oh.
The screen falls
Let's see.
asleep, and I try to remember to set it, but yeah.
You know, in this climate sometimes, man, it's like, you know, everybody wants to critique everything, you know, and it's
Right.
like, you know, just enjoy the moment, have fun, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be the most, that's not what I do. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna play my game and I'm gonna give it my best and I'm gonna be happy with whatever lands out the horn. You know?
Right.
And some days I think I played real crappy and people are like, man, you sounded great. I'm like, wow, really? I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't so bad, you know.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's hard to deal with that. I've learned a lot. You know, I'm working out of this book called The Musician's Dilemma by Dan Rubright. I'll show you the book. It's really helped me kind of make strides about accepting who I am, accepting the kind of player I am, and just like what you said, getting back to the basics of why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, and that's really the most important thing. Somebody just said to me, because I was sort of being tough on myself, and he said, "You enable us to dance," and I was like, "Oh, okay." That's true. Like that's the important thing is the enjoyment people get out of music, and we're providing that.
And there's only one you know.
Right.
I can't go and pretend I'm you and do it the way you're gonna do it, and then vice versa. And that's what makes it cool and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember Brett Stamp said something one time.
What a great guy.
Man, I've always been a fan of his since high school. 'Cause
Yeah.
He used to, Bo just used to sometimes get him to arrange some of our music. And he arranged this particularly, I guess it was my sophomore year, he arranged Porgy and Bess.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's amazing.
Man, but he took it and turned it into like R&B funk.
Whoa, really?
So like it ain't necessarily soul, was kind of still like more that
How cool is that? Is there a recording of that performance?
I've only got
Oh.
I've got it on cassette
Oh
tape.
my God, on cassette, we have to get that out or something.
Yeah.
I bet that is amazing.
If I can actually get the music from him, if he still has that somewhere archived, I just want the score so I can recreate that. But he even took like I Got Plenty on that, like I got plenty on nothing. Boom, ba-doo-doo. I'm like, what
I
is
can
somebody?
totally hear that though. It seems like a fit.
Yeah,
a really
man.
good fit.
I mean, he was just a good arranger, but he's always just been a good trombone player ever since I was like in high school. But he just always just say, just be you. And you know, like he said, sometimes, you know, we focus on too much of the wrong stuff and we don't focus on what's happening right now and stuff like that. You know,
Exactly.
everybody's not gonna play bebop. And in a lot of contexts of stuff I do, I have no reason to really be studying bebop that hard because I'm not doing any bebop gigs.
Right. There
You know,
you go.
I'm not, DJing going, or with some Cardi B track. It just
Right.
doesn't work like that.
No,
So,
no.
You know, you can take some of the elements out of it, but you just mixed up and blended.
Yeah.
I was even watching Keon and Glasper talk with Talib Kweli on one of his podcasts, and they asked him about like, what do you think about like Nicholas Payton and like, like stop trying to label the jazz sound like jazz is dead. And that's kind of true. Like like music is, people are made up of so many different experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take like people that are in the bluegrass, whether you're in salsa, Afrobeat, whether you go into like if you're in from gospel, any of the Jewish music, any of the Indian music. There's so many different things that go into the pot of a particular musician.
Yeah.
So you can't really just label them to be this particular sound.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not a good, it's a disservice to the music to treat it like it's so explainable.
Right. And you kind of just kill the vibe. You know?
Yeah.
Just let
yeah.
stuff just be. You know, I
Right.
mean, that was one thing I think people don't realize about the Basie band. The Basie band sound changes every time depending on who was leading the band.
Right.
You know, Frank Foster had his way of leading the band. You know, it was totally
Mhm.
different. You know, so
That's a good point. Yeah.
No.
God, I love Basie. I got to see Count Basie in 83, 82
Oh,
at the
wow.
Chicago Jazz Festival. It was just amazing. I was in high school. My mom took me and my friend up to Chicago. Count Basie, I'd never seen or heard of Count. I mean, I'd heard it somewhere in my upbringing. you know,
Wow.
but I was just amazed.
And
And he was getting up there in age, I think, by then, 82.
But still was playing.
It was incredible.
Man, I think
Really inspiring.
one of my biggest fails in college was my trombone professor invited me to this concert.
Hmm.
And, you know, me, I'm like, oh, yeah, you know, cool. I'll get a little dressed up, bring a little date. You know, show up as this guy named Slide Hampton and the Jazz Master
Oh boy. Oh man.
with Robin Eubanks,
Oh.
Daniel Perez, Brian Blade was playing,
Oh, you're kidding.
Jimmy Owens was playing.
Holy smokes.
You know, John Faddis was playing.
Okay.
You know, I forget who was playing bass, but it was just a good band. And I'm sitting backstage, like talking to all these people.
Was it Patitucci on bass? Was it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I cannot remember. It was a brother playing bass, but he
Okay.
I was like, man, this is. And then you got Sly Hampton sitting up there like, is he playing trombone left-handed? How's he doing that?
Oh, he's amazing, isn't he?
I mean, he was. I mean, just even watching him play and watching the sound of that band, and that's when, like, actually, I realized I definitely wanted a big band at some point in my life. because-
Yeah. So that was a big inspiration, seeing Slide Hampton and.
Oh man, you know, at that time they were just playing like what else was on that record? They had a whole bunch of songs. They played bebop, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Then they would just sit there and flip it to this like the thing was groove. They played Tour de Force.
Wow.
It was a lot of great tunes that was like, man, I just never, you know, really heard of. But you know, you start going to research, and then when I got back to St. Louis, some years later, I used to go to Riddles. I used to go to Riddles too, but also to Delmar Lounge.
Oh yeah.
To see
yeah,
it.
I remember that place.
You know, John Norman used to play there, and that was when he had Scrooge Harris playing with.
Yeah, for Bag, right?
And it's-
Seen Bag.
yeah. Scrooge was part of Bag, so was Victor Reef and LaFleur's. And Scrooge sat there and said, "You sound like this cat named Gretchen Moncure," and I was like, "Who?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had to go do some research. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man,
I've got some CDs of his. He's quite a voice.
man, you know, but a lot of cats don't talk about him. you know.
No, I know.
And his playing was just different than everybody else. Like his playing is different than Curtis Fuller's playing. You know.
Yeah.
You know? So it just, you know, there's nothing wrong.
I mean, that gets back to your point. We're all different.
Yeah.
We're all playing what we hear, and it couldn't all come out the same. It
Right.
wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it wouldn't be life. You know, we're all not talking the same. We're all not
That's-
walking the same. You know, everybody's different. You know,
yeah,
just respect everybody and let them have their piece and give them their voice and keep them moving.
yeah.
So,
Well, hey man, this has been really great.
Oh, man.
I can't thank you enough for
No,
this talk.
this has been
Um,
fun.
Lamar Harris. I keep looking at the laptop and not the camera.
Oh, there's the camera.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's up there. It's so tiny, but it's so big. So there's the camera. So I'm going to say, hey everybody, Lamar Harris, in my basement, right here in my basement studio. I'm so thrilled to have you here. Thank you for being here. And the show is Trombone Is Enough, because it is enough. So please subscribe and check in weekly for the next episode. Thank you again.
Oh, thanks for having it, and be sure to support this channel. You know, if there's a Patreon or anything, definitely make sure you subscribe, and support.
Thank you. Peace. Awesome.
Oh, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
This
man,
is so cool.
This is cool.
Man, I just I'm not like a trained interviewer, so
No, man.
I'm I don't really know what I'm doing.